and here we are, and here's the latest. And I think there's probably a lot of people disappointed that there hadn't been any action, going on over the last few days. But we don't know what's being talked about behind the scenes. And I think we're also getting a good idea that, after Oklahoma and Texas, everybody seemed to be on watch, and then boom, all of a sudden here comes the LA schools, and then everybody's like, okay, now wait a freaking second, like this is way too much. And I think we're seeing everybody, with their guards up now more than ever, and trying to ultimately, do what's best for their schools. But I think also having to realize that the decisions being made are going to have an effect on everybody, and it's not just about doing what's best for your school. And I think that maybe that's creating some of this kind of slowdown in terms of just, oh my gosh, grab the life raft. And I think everybody's going, wait a second. Stop panicking. Let's all look around and see what's what and figure it out from here. And so I think there's a lot of figuring out going on. And, going from talking to one commissioner to mentioning that starting on Wednesday, we'll be in Arlington at Big 12 Media Days. And Brett Yormark, the new commissioner, is going to speak on Wednesday morning. And it'll be very interesting to see what he has to say, because he's got a lot to address. Even if he was just a brand new commissioner walking into a totally normal scenario, he would have a lot of questions to answer. But this being not a normal scenario at all with what all's going on, and just the future of the Big 12 having been in such doubt over and over again the last couple of years in particular, it'll be very interesting to see what he has to say. But, the more thoughts the merrier as far as I'm concerned, and clearly there's a lot of people that are a bit concerned about just how small, some people may want to make this, and just the effects that it'll have on college sports as a whole, because it's not just all about football, even though that's kind of how it seems sometimes.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And one part of all of this constant up and down the roller coaster, the emotions, all of a sudden your team is a part of it, and then others are left behind. The Big 12 has been a part of this now, again, since Nebraska, Colorado left, then it was A&M and Missouri, and then Texas, Oklahoma, as they're in that transition. But other conferences have been affected as well. What we have tried to do is, for example, have writers who cover Oregon State or Washington or Oregon, but also other conferences, commissioners who have been a part of this before, and how the domino effect affects them. And so we will continue to do that as well. And here's one thing I do know. There's never going to be just this is the status quo like it was forever and ever and ever and ever. Because even then, back 25, 30, 40 years ago, the Pac-12 grew, the Big Ten grew, others grew, and they'll probably grow again. The question, and no one has the answer to this, is how much will they continue to grow? How many conferences will get from 16 to 20? Although part of the news today that, Craig, you brought up, appears the SEC for now feels pretty good about staying at 16.
Yeah, that's the report. That's from Saturday Down South. That's Dennis Dodd coming out a couple hours later and saying, yeah, me too. I also can report this, and I'm sure there have been others. I just haven't seen them that have third and fourth confirmed it or whatever. But, that's the report. Believe what you want to believe. I can't sit here, and I wish we did have somebody who could just go like, boom, that's true, and boom, that's not. Coming from that source, you assume that it's true, but there are a lot of rumors that fly around during realignment. Who was it I was seeing? Was it Heartland that was bringing up SMU to the Big 12? I thought I saw a post about that either last night or earlier today, that there was some little scuttlebutt about that. SMU, who you mentioned, you reported over a year ago, or about a year ago, was one of those four teams that the Big 12, before all this other stuff was happening, this was post-OU Texas, so this was about probably a month from right now, this time last year. Fast forward a month last year, and that's when we would have been talking, I think, about obviously the fallout from Oklahoma, Texas, but then ultimately the other schools that were being discussed, and SMU was one of those four schools that the Big 12 was apparently eyeing. So when I saw that, I did think there was some credence to it, because we know that the Big 12 has looked and talked and thought about SMU before, but it just mentioned them solely, and I didn't delve too much further. I don't know if there was other mentions, but at this point, to me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Bringing in SMU, I think that some other dominoes would have to fall, in my opinion. But there is that out there as well, and obviously Notre Dame will be talking about them. That's going to be the big domino, that if there is going to be this period of kind of quiet and calm now as the season starts to begin, that would be the one piece that could fall that would really just churn it all back up, again, and really cause the domino effect.
Yeah, when the Big 12 had to respond to Texas OU, those 4 we had from pretty much from day one. Brigham Young, of course, made sense. Cincinnati was a good grab. And I know there was always debate about Houston. They're in, and now obviously with UCF as well. And then there were thoughts that if the college football expansion, the championship expansion had occurred, then maybe others, and including the Big 12, would have to go bigger. Doesn't mean they were, depending on who you talk to. And the 4, and one of the schools that was brought up a little bit as a possibility, SMU was one, USF was one, and I don't know, a lot of people will debate that, oh my God, it never happened, because when the college football playoff expansion hit a roadblock, that ended any other opportunities, at least at the time, and maybe for a while, for expansion since the new 4 were coming in.
SMU, USF, Boise State, and who was the 4th one?
SMU,
Memphis, yeah. Now, those were the second wave, if the Big 12 had decided to have gone that direction, that they were at least exploring, according to who he was talking to, who, that was where we got the heads up and all the talk about that first wave. That's obviously helped create a lot of this madness that's going on right now, and obviously will be a big talking point starting next year, especially with those 4 schools joining the Big 12. But, yeah, I saw that, and there's been other, little scuttlebutt out there. Certainly SMU, going back to them, though, and following up on that, I mean, that's a team that I know John Wilner, who's out there covering the Pac, probably to the point of exhaustion. Those Pac-12 reporters are out there throwing every scenario imaginable, to the masses. And, that includes joining up with the Big 12, which I don't know, that just seems really unlikely. That includes, poaching teams or whatever. And one of the teams he has mentioned over and over that I guess his sources are mentioning and throwing out there is SMU, because of the Texas tie and the Dallas market, although we know that's not really the Dallas market, just like TCU's not really the DFW market either. But, SMU is a team that's getting at least some looks throughout this, scuttlebutt phase, and I'm not sure if they're any closer to that actually becoming something that is more than just rumor. But, if they play their cards right and the way things are going, maybe they can find themselves getting a step up, because they are kind of almost, I guess, next in line, you would say, as far as the Texas schools go. But that's interesting.
I agree. And again, a lot of you commented about some of the schools we mentioned. Some don't want it. Some don't like it. Some of you think it's not a bad idea. Hey, and it's a constant, ever-changing deal. The Big Ten's network, when they announced that thing, whatever, 1 point whatever billion, that then you would think is the next that creates whatever happens next.
Yeah.
Tony Altomare